Hello guys, how are we doing today? I want to believe we're doing good. I want to believe we're doing great. I want to say welcome back to our channel and welcome to this video. I want to believe that our last video was inspiring, it was quite educative, and it was enlightening. In our last video, we talked about 4 fundamental laws for Bible study. We talked about law of first mention, law of single mention, law of emphatic mention. If you've not watched that video, I strongly recommend that you go check it out because we explain a whole lot in detail. And even the video before that, we talked about the basis for Bible study, and it was quite educative, quite inspiring. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the difference between Christianity and Judaism. Yes. Now, this topic has been a serious issue for many Christians, and in fact I believe that many Christians are actually confused about the issue of Christianity. You hear people say certain things, practice certain things, and if you question them, they'll tell you it's in the Bible. Do you understand that this practice is in the Bible? So we're going to explain the difference between Christianity and Judaism. We'll know whether what practices are in Christianity, what practices are in Judaism, so you know whether what you are practicing as an individual, as a church, as a corporation, whether it is actually Christianity or Judaism. Are we together? So we're going to be very detailed in this video, and just like every other of our videos, it's going to be very inspiring and educating. So I urge you, get your Bible, get your notepad, and be seated. Call your friends, share this video to people you know that need to learn this. And if you're not yet subscribed to this channel, I urge you to do that right now. Like this video, and if you like this video, or when you like this video, the algorithm will share it to more people, and more people will get to see this content, because it is when there is engagement and interaction with a video that the algorithm will see that people like this content and will share it, will show it to more people. So if you want more people to see what we are doing here and learn from what we are discussing here, then you would like to like this video and comment. What do you learn from this video? If you have any question, you should also put that in the comment section, and I promise we're going to answer every question one after the other. In fact, if your question requires a video, I promise you we're going to make a video to explain that topic comprehensively so that everybody can learn together. So I said that in this video we're going to be talking about the difference between Christianity and Judaism. Now let's start with a bit of background on Judaism. Now, Abraham was the father of the Jews. Pay attention. Abraham was the father of the Jews, but Abraham himself never practiced Judaism. Do you understand that? So, Judaism started long after Abraham. Now, why did God call Abraham out of his father's house and to come and serve him? Listen, pay attention. Abraham grew up in a society that was polytheistic, and Abraham himself was a monotheist. Do you understand? A monotheist is a person who believes in the existence of one God, while a polytheist is one who believes in the existence of many gods. So where Abraham grew up, there were several gods. In fact, if you've heard the story, Abraham's family were idol worshippers. That's a fact. So now I want to tell you a particular story that is not in the Bible. Just pay attention. I read this story from a book written by a Jewish rabbi. So we're going to, in subsequent videos, we're going to talk about stories and ideas that are not in the Bible but could relate with the Bible. So I'm going to explain certain things and how to filter these things. But just listen to this story. It's your choice whether to believe it or not, but just hear the story. So in this book written by a Jewish rabbi, he said that Abraham's father was selling idols. Do you understand? So he makes graven images and sell. So being that they were in a polytheistic society, people used to come and buy gods from Abraham's father and keep in their houses to worship. So a proof that a person loves God, and also a proof that the person is wealthy, is when the person has a bigger God. So gods were in sizes, and to have a bigger God means you reference God more, or let's say, yeah, you have reference for your God, and of course you must be wealthy to be able to afford a bigger God. So the graven images were made in different sizes, from smaller ones to the bigger ones. So people used to bring food and offerings to come and give to some of the gods that Abraham's father was selling. We're still talking about the story that was written by the Jewish rabbi, and from what I've heard, there are several other books that confirms this story. So he said that one day Abraham was the one in the father's business outlets where where he sells goods. And a woman came, she brought a tray of food, and she actually came before and made some prayers to one of the gods, and the bigger god actually. And when she went back, she got answers to her prayers. So she came with an offering, which was a tray of food for the bigger god. You understand what I mean? And Abraham was there. After she left, Abraham angrily, because of what he was seeing, because he felt that this was nonsense, this doesn't mean anything. So he picked up an axe and destroyed all the gods in the shop, scattered everything and left it there, and sat down angrily waiting for his father to come back. So when his father came back, his father was angry with him. What have you done, Abraham? And he said, well, a woman brought this tray of food for the small god, or the medium-sized god, because she prayed to the god and it answered his prayer, or answered her prayer. So she decided to bring an offering. And the bigger god was watching the medium-sized god eating the food. So he got angry and stood up and fight with the bigger god, with the medium-sized god. And the smaller god, seeing that the two were fighting, they decided to come and eat, and all the gods started fighting, and they scattered the whole place. And Abraham's father looked at him furiously and said, what sort of nonsense story are you telling? That all these things are pieces of wood. How can you tell me that they started fighting each other? Abraham said, yes, I got you. So you have admitted that these things are pieces of wood and none of them means anything. So it became a dicey situation. The father was very angry with him and warned him not to come close to his shop again. Do you understand? So that's a story I need us to just have at the background, or at the back of our mind. It tells us that Abraham was in a polytheistic society, but he believed in the existence of one God. So God called him to come and worship him. I already said that Abraham never practiced Judaism, even though he was the father of the Jews. So I also said that Judaism started long after Abraham. So Abraham, as a person who got to know God for the first time, not by learning from other people, he never knew God much. He worshipped God based on the things he thought were right. Pay attention. Abraham worshipped God based on the things, or in a way that he thought was right. But the striking thing, the most important thing about Abraham's life, which the Bible records in the New Testament, is the fact that he believed God. And what did he believe about God? that from his loins shall come out the Messiah. Do we understand? Having understood this fact about Abraham, so the next question will be, if we say that Abraham never practiced Judaism, so the question will be, when did Judaism start? Yes, Judaism started in Mount Sinai. It started long after Abraham. So what is Judaism? Judaism is the worship of Yahweh through the Mosaic Code. I repeat, Judaism is the worship of Yahweh through the Mosaic Code. So, a person who worships God, Jehovah, which is also Yahweh, based on or through the Mosaic Code, through the laws of Moses. And remember, when we say the laws of Moses, we're not talking about the 10 Commandments. We're talking about the entirety of the Old Covenant system. Do you understand me? The entirety of the Old Covenant system, that is the Mosaic Code. So it had 613 laws, which included the ceremonial laws and the moral laws. So when you hear people say the law has passed, some people's mind go to the 10 Commandments, which is the moral laws. No, it is beyond that. It is the entire system that Moses used to teach the children of Israel, and which was what was the guideline, or let's put it this way, it was the constitution of Israel. Yes, that's the truth. The Mosaic Code was the constitution of Israel. This was the guidelines for their day-to-day life. This is how they were meant to operate as a community, as a nation, and how they should relate with God. How they should relate with one another and how they should relate with God. This was the system of Judaism. This was Judaism, and this was the system that Moses communicated to the children of Israel. Do you understand that? We're still building on this fact. So Christianity, on the other hand, is the worship of God through, or worship of Yahweh through the teachings of Christ. Or let's put it this way, through Christ himself and his teachings. This is Christianity. Now let's read Exodus chapter 19 verse 20. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. So this was the account of Mount Sinai, and this is when it was in chapter 20 that the law was inaugurated. Do you understand? Now let's read John chapter 14 verse 6. Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. So this is Jesus explaining Christianity. Mind you, he did not use the word Christianity. He said that he is the way, the truth, and the life. So we explain Christianity as being the worship of Yahweh through Christ and his teachings. Do you understand? And we say that Judaism is the worship of Yahweh through the Mosaic Code. Do we understand? Now let's continue. Also note that the name Christians or Christianity, the name Christians was not a name that the disciples took upon themselves. It was actually given to the disciples by unbelievers. Are we together? It was unbelievers who noticed the way, the attitude, the behavior of the believers in the early church and decided to give them a label. They called them Christians, which means like Christ or Christ-like. So Christianity is not actually a religion. It is a lifestyle. It's a name that people call people, or unbelievers call believers, because of what they saw them do. They saw them behave like Christ, so they call them Christians. So look at Acts chapter 11 verse 26. And when he had found him, he brought him unto Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people, and the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. So this was the first time the disciples were called Christians. It's not a name the disciples took upon themselves. It's a name that unbelievers, unbelievers decided to call them, that this name fits what they were doing. They were acting like Christ, so they decided to call them. Some people will even want to say that this name was more like a mockery. Do you understand? But let's say it's just a label that the unbelievers gave the believers. Are we together? I hope we are flowing together so that you don't miss out on the facts that's being shared here. Having gotten this background, we've explained Christianity, we've explained Judaism. Now let's talk about the characteristics of Judaism before we get into characteristics of Christianity, and we will know where they meet. Now, I'm going to give us a few characteristics of Judaism, not all. So, of course, I expect you to research and know more. The first characteristics of Judaism is circumcision. Now, you will want to argue that circumcision was a transaction between God and Abraham. Yes, but when it came to the time of the law, it became mandatory. Pay attention, you're going to get my point. Look at Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15 from verse 1. And certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren, and said, except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, ye cannot be saved. Do you understand? So, under the law of Moses, circumcision was compulsory. It was a sign that you've been initiated into Judaism. Are we together? So it was compulsory. It was something you cannot do without. It's not negotiable. So in this passage, some Jews went to the Gentile church and taught that it was compulsory for the Gentiles to be circumcised. Do you understand? So, as good as circumcision is, it should be something that one chooses to do. Do you understand? But under Judaism, it is compulsory. It has nothing to do with your choice. It has nothing to do with your feeling. You must get circumcised. If not, you are not worshiping God. In fact, if an uncircumcised person enter the temple, he is considered filthy. And in fact, it is considered that the person has contaminated the temple. Do you understand? It was that serious. So look at verse 2. When therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain other of them should go up to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders about this question. So Paul and Barnabas were not in agreement with this kind of teaching. It's not supposed to be compulsory. And there was serious contention, serious argument with them or among them, that they decided to send some people to Jerusalem. Let's go and discuss this thing with the elders and come to a conclusion, because the Jews said no, that the Gentiles cannot worship God if they are not circumcised. Paul said no, these people are full-grown adults. They can't get circumcised now. It should be a choice, not as in it's a code, it's a mode of conduct, it's something that they ought to do. Are we together? So circumcision was compulsory. Do we understand that? So circumcision was compulsory. It is, whether you like it or not, you must get circumcised before you can be allowed to worship God. Number two, second characteristics of Judaism is localized temple worship. Localized temple worship means that in whatever part of the world you are, as far as you claim to worship Jehovah, you must come to the temple in Jerusalem every Sabbath day to worship Jehovah. Do you understand? This is exactly, or this was the case of the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts chapter 8. Acts 8 verse 27. And he arose and went, and behold, a man from Ethiopia, an eunuch of great authority, under Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who had the charge of all her treasure, and had come to Jerusalem for to worship. So the Ethiopian eunuch came all the way from Ethiopia to Jerusalem to worship God. Do you understand? This man was the minister of finance of Ethiopia. In today's terminology, that's what we call him. He was the minister of finance in Ethiopia. And he came all the way from Ethiopia to Jerusalem just to worship God and go back to Ethiopia. So most likely he did this every week. Do you understand? So Philip saw him, and Philip had a conversation with him and discussed Christ. So under Judaism, everybody who worshiped God ought to come to the temple. Now, let me give us a little background. I think I omitted this at the early part of this video. That Judaism was basically the constitution of Israel as a nation. The Jews claimed ownership of God, that they were the ones who owned God, they were the ones worshiping God, and every other nations on earth were called heathen. Do you get me? So they were worshiping God in the temple, and even though they were living in some parts of the city that were far away from the temple, but they still had to come to the temple whenever it's time or days of worship. Are we together? So it was until the knowledge of God started spreading to different parts of the world, especially through Christians. And in fact, it was Christians who started spreading the knowledge of God, not even the Jews. The Jews claimed ownership, and in fact, it was a thing of birth that you need to be born Jew to worship God. I don't know if you understand. So they were descendants of Abraham and descendants of Israel, formerly Jacob. So they worshiped God, and they had their role in the household of God. So they were limiting God to a nation. Meanwhile, God had the entire world as part of his plan. Okay, let's proceed. So to worship God, one ought to come to Jerusalem every time. So under Judaism, we had localized temple worship. So everybody has to worship God in the temple. If you're not coming to the temple to worship God, then you are not practicing Judaism and you are not worshiping God. In fact, at the time, this caused a contention between the Jews and the Samaritans. Look at the conversation of the Samaritan woman with Jesus in John chapter 4. John 4 verse 20. Our fathers, this is the Samaritan woman speaking, our fathers worshipped in this mountain. And ye say, when ye say, talking about the Jews, that your people say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Do you get me? So the woman was saying that her fathers told them or taught them that at a time God was worshipped from Samaria, in Samaria. But the Jews insisted that God has to be worshipped in Jerusalem. So one has to come to Jerusalem to worship God. So this was part of her argument with Jesus. Do you understand? So the Jews claimed ownership of God and insisted that the worship of God has to be in Jerusalem, in the temple. So localized temple worship was a part of Judaism. So if you are practicing Judaism today, you have to be traveling to Israel from whatever part of the world you are. You're in Africa, you're in Asia, you're in Europe, you are in America. You have to be traveling to Jerusalem every Sabbath day to go worship Jehovah. How many of us can do this? All right, number 3, observance of feast days. Now, the Jews had several feast days like Pentecost, Passover, Jubilee, and several feast days. This was a major part of their practices, and they celebrated this from time to time. So, observance of feast days was part of Judaism. Number 4 is animal sacrifices. Now, this is the part that many people don't like to hear. But under Judaism, animal sacrifices was part of the system. It was an integral part of Judaism, starting from atonement, Passover, and several feast days and sacrifices required the blood of animals, and animal sacrifices was a major part of Judaism. Are we together? Is this getting interesting? Then number 5 is ceremonial washing. Now, ceremonial washing is some kind of washing that was ceremonial done by the Jews, like they could pass an object through water, and it's regarded as a major religious activity. Do you understand? So even sometimes some of these practices was just sprinkling, either sprinkling water or blood on objects, and it is considered washing. So ceremonial washing was a major practice in Judaism. These were practices, or these were characteristics of Judaism. Are we still together? Then number 6, still on characteristics of Judaism. Now, this is going to be annoying to some people. It was the presence of a high priest and a priestly tribe. Now, pay attention. Under Judaism, there was a tribe called the tribe of Levi. They were mandated to produce the high priest and the priest for the temple. So they were required not to work, not to farm, but stay in the temple. Do you understand? So they were never considered when the land was being shared, because they said that God is their inheritance. They were to serve in the temple, and they had a high priest. So the tribe of Levi produced the high priest. Now, this was a practice under Judaism and cannot be authenticated in today's world. Anybody who claims that he is a Levi in today's world, the person has plan, and I promise you, the plan is financial. His plan is to collect tithe. That's why he's claiming he's a Levi. So Levi is not supposed to work. He has intention, and that is in your pocket. So under Judaism, to become a Levi, you must be born into the tribe. It is not something you claim. It is not something you receive. It's not something you lambano. It was something that you were born into. You can't choose whether to be a Levi or not. Once you're born into the family, you are a Levi, or you're a Levite. So people don't walk into the tribe of Levi. You don't just become a Levite. You are born into. I'm emphasizing because after now we'll be hearing several things, and many people will claim certain things which they've been claiming before now, that they are Levite. So anybody who tell you he's a Levite and he wants to collect tithes, then your question should be, if you're a Levite, what tribe am I? Do you understand? All right. Now, let me say this thing. Let me say this one thing, which is very important. Pay attention. Judaism was a step away from idol worship, because God was worshipped through things. I'll say it again. Judaism is a step away from idol worship. So Judaism is pretty close to idol worship. And in fact, if you want to be critical about it, you can put Judaism and idol worship in one box. But let's say that it is a step away from idol worship, because God was worshipped through things. Okay. Now let's talk about the characteristics of Christianity. Then we will look for the meeting point between Christianity and Judaism. Number one, under characteristics of Christianity, the law is written in our hearts. See Hebrews chapter 8 from verse 7 to 10. Hebrews 8 from verse 7. For if that the first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he said, Behold, the days come, said the Lord, where I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers, in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, said the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, said the Lord. I will put my laws in their mind and write them in their heart, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. So, under Christianity, which we will want to call the new covenant, the law was written in the hearts of the people. Are we together? The law was written in the hearts of the people. Number two, equal access to the Father through Christ. John chapter 14 from verse 12. John 14 from verse 12. Very verily I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. And whatsoever ye shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. And verse 14, if you shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. So, believers have equal access to the Father under Christianity. Meanwhile, under Judaism, those who practice Judaism talked to the priest, and the priest spoke to God on their behalf. Do we understand? So we all have equal access to the Father. We don't need to go through a priest to speak to God. Understood? And number three, ability to talk to God anytime and anywhere. Look at John chapter 4 from verse 21. Jesus said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet in Jerusalem worship the Father. Verse 23. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. So I said that under Christianity, we have the ability to talk to the Father at any time and in any way. Remember, we said under Judaism, they had localized temple worship. So you can't talk to God from anywhere. You need to be in Jerusalem. You need to be in the temple to speak to God, to pray. So under Christianity, Jesus said that you can speak. He said to the woman, he said, the hour cometh when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And he said that you shall worship the Father neither in this mountain, talking about in Samaria, nor in Jerusalem. So one will be able to worship the Father from anywhere at any time he chooses to. So this is a practice under Christianity. Are we together? Do we understand? So under Christianity, you're not obligated to go into Jerusalem, to go to the temple, to go and worship, to pray, to seek the face of God. You can do that from your room. You can do that on the road. You can do that in the toilet. Are we together? Now, number 4, no more animal sacrifices. He said it in Hebrews chapter 10 from verse 1. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect. Verse 2. For then would they not have ceased to be offered, because the worshippers, once purged, should have had no more conscience of sin. But in those sacrifices, there is a remembrance again made of sin every year. Now, verse 4. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he said, Sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body art thou prepared me. In burnt offering and sacrifices for sin, thou had no pleasure. Are we together? He said that he had no pleasure in burnt offerings and sacrifices. Now, verse 7. Then said I, Lo, I come. In the volume of the books it is written of me, to do thy will, O God. Verse 8. Above, when he said, Sacrifice and offerings and burnt offerings and offerings for sin, thou wouldest not, neither hast pleasure therein, which are offering by the law. Then said he, Lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second. Now verse 10. By the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. Are we together? So, sacrifices and burnt offerings, he had no pleasure in them. So, this is to let us know that the system of Judaism was not the will of God. Let's proceed. Just have that somewhere. Then, number 5 characteristics of Christianity: no ceremonial washing or feast days. No more feast days. No more feast days. For those of you that have been doing Passover, no more feast days. Pay attention and get used to it. So, feast days, ceremonial washings were all practices under Judaism. I see people celebrating full moon. I see people making prayers on certain time of the year, certain time of the day, and they claim that it is in a time like this that God hears prayer more, or in a time like this that God asks the children of Israel to do this, to pray about this, intercede about that, and all manner of talk. Can you imagine? Do you know that when Daniel was in Babylon, he prayed for the liberation of Israel, and he prayed facing the temple? So, people are practicing it today, and I don't know which temple they are facing to pray. So, they face their church, or some people face a part of the church that they call altar. Some people even have altars in their houses. Wow. So you hear sermons like, let's raise an altar for the Lord. And for an altar to be raised, there has to be sacrifice. And a sacrifice, in today's world, we don't accept animals again. It's money we accept. So money is the sacrifice on altar. Wow. Wow. So this is what people have turned into. This is what many people have turned Christianity into. Now listen, do you know that what most people practice in today's world is a perverted form of Judaism in the name of Christianity? How come people choose which laws to keep and which laws not to? Are you aware that it is written that failure to keep one of the law is failure to do all? So some people say that it is wrong for a woman to wear man's thing and a man to wear woman's thing, yet they wear an outfit that the top is a different material from the trouser. Huh? Some people say that it is wrong to eat animals that is strangled, so they don't eat animal that is caught in trap. They eat animal that they kill. Meanwhile, these same people bear false witness against another. Meanwhile, these same people grow different kind of crops under the same piece of land or on the same piece of land. Are we together? So the law is not something that you cherry pick. You don't choose which one to keep. Do you understand? The Bible says failure to keep one is failure to do all. You don't choose which ones you keep. Listen, let it sink. You don't choose which of the law to keep. If you claim that you want to worship God based on the laws of Moses, then keep by it. 613 laws. Keep all of them. That is what to do. And if you know you can't, then you should accept Christ as being the one who has fulfilled the law, and you come into his rest. He said, come unto me all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So you accept his work. He came to fulfill the law so that we will live under the grace and love of God, not under the law. Are we together? So I said earlier that Judaism is a step away from idol worship, and I believe from this teaching I've been able to explain that fact, that Judaism is we can put Judaism and idol worship in one box. But if we want to be fair, based on the fact that it's a worship of God, then we can say it's a step away from idol worship, because God is worshipped through things. So in conclusion, a person who claims to be a Christian, pay attention, a person who claims to be a Christian must know the distinction between these two and understand the transition, and must not try to carry these two simultaneously or put them in the same boat. I've heard people teach about is it the law of the firstborn, the law of first fruits, the law of this, the law of that. There are people who teach about Jubilee. You know, Jubilee that happens once in 50 years. So they claim that, and under Jubilee, or in Jubilee under the law that's under Judaism, was when slave owners released their slaves. So they bring it to modern day setting and say that people who are under captivity of wickedness, darkness, and all of that, that in Jubilee they have to pray for them to be released from those captivity. If not, they'll wait till the next 50 years. Now, when you teach a thing like this, do you know that under Judaism, the slave owner and the slave were aware that this year was a year of Jubilee? Are you aware? So if you bring that to modern day setting, and you're talking about those who are held captive by power of darkness, are you telling me that the power of darkness that holds someone captive is aware that this year is Jubilee and he should let go of the person? Are you thinking at all? Are we together? So the truth is that there's no meeting point between Christianity and Judaism. That's a fact. There's no meeting point between Christianity and Judaism. Jesus came to put an end to the law. So that's why he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one cometh to the Father but by me. So the only criteria to see the Father, to access the Father, is to go through Jesus. And going through Jesus means leaving the law behind. I hope this was helpful. I hope you're blessed from this teaching. I hope this was enlightening enough. If you have any question, feel free to put it in the comment section, to write in the comment section. And if you've learned anything, also comment under this video. Let me know what part blessed you the most, which side you learned a lot, what are you learning for the first time, and what you would like to share with the people. If you're not yet subscribed to this channel, you know this is the time to do that. Click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that anytime we post videos like this, you'll be the first to be notified. And if you like this video, ensure to like it so that the algorithm can show it to more people. And do well to share this video with your friends, your family and relatives, those you know that need to see this video and learn from this teaching. So that's it about the difference between Christianity and Judaism. See you in the next video.